Welcome to Brunch with Besties podcast.
Hey guys.
I am Sherry Renee.
And I'm Chanel.
Our mission is to heal and help others as we heal and help ourselves through purpose-driven conversations.
Yep.
Today we have a special guest here with us.
Back in the building.
Back at it again, Miss Jasmine Gates.
Yes. Hey.
The new Black History Maker.
All of that.
So today we're going to talk about healing our relationships with our mom, because we know how that can be sometimes, child.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a whole thing. But before we get into that, we're going to start like we always do with a toast. So I'll start with you, Chanel. Who are you toasting to?
I'm giving my toast to the podcast. We're back. It feels good to be back in the studio. We were just away for personal reasons, various reasons, but we're back and I was excited to come back today. I'm tired in a mug, but I'm here.
Child.
So toast to the podcast.
Toast to the podcast, to those listeners.
Yes,
who've
thank
been hanging out.
Right. Y'all the real MVPs, the
real
listeners.
MVPs.
Yes.
So Jazz, who are you toasting to today?
I'm gonna toast to my Lakers.
Okay.
They're out here. We as Laker fans have been through the valleys of losing for the past few years, and we're finally back in the finals. So I'm excited about that. I'm a basketball head, so that's I don't have a deep one today. That's my my toast.
It's okay. We can keep it light.
Exactly. Go Lakers, because the Bucks is out.
I actually am a fan of the Bucks too, though.
There we go.
So yeah,
cracking.
But yeah.
My toast goes to Terry Seville Foy, because I found a book that I bought from her over 10 years ago, and it says imagine 5 years from now. So you're supposed to create things in this book that represent the life you want to create 5 years out. So since I'm trifling and I didn't do nothing with it 10 years ago, I decided over this weekend to invest some time in it and plan my life out 5 years from now.
Okay. Yay. That's awesome.
So shouts out to Terry Seville Foy for making that book.
That's what's up. I'm excited to see it all come to life.
Yes,
and manifest. Exciting.
So now let's break bread. We're going to check in, because we're that type of podcast, apparently.
Right. The Oprahs, let's be clear.
Oprahs of the good news.
There we go.
So Chanel, how are you doing? Let's break bread.
How am I doing? I'm okay. It's cold here. It was nice today, but at night it gets really cold. So just the changing of seasons, you know what comes with that. Like the seasons change, and you feel like a resounding like, I could do this, and things are changing. This is great. Like, this is new opportunity to be new, new season, new me, all that jazz. So I'm in that space of trying to reinvent and be new, and starting with the working out with all these trips that we just planned. So it's like, get your body right, because you don't want to be on a beach and like, nope, you got to cover up. Nope.
Right.
All my skins. We ain't covering up nothing. This beach is gonna get these bodies, so
we're gonna be on the beach serving cakes.
All the cakes. Listen, any kind of cake you want. So I'm excited. So that's where I am.
Okay.
Yes.
And Jazz, the new Black History Maker. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm in a very different. I mean, even from the last time that we talked, I'm in a very different space just in life in general. So I'm good. Definitely just on this more spiritual journey of really trusting God more, which is interesting because you had mentioned me being growing up in the church, and I think sometimes you grow up in the church, but then you don't really have that relationship with God like you have been taught to. And then at some point, the transition happens. So definitely a lot of transitioning, but it's new territory, very, very new territory for me. So I'm floating through life, oh, okay, well, this is what, this is how God is in this, and this is how God is in that. So it's interesting.
That's powerful.
Good space to be in.
We'll have to check in with you as this progresses and see how you doing.
Yeah, definitely. I'm always open to that.
Awesome. All right. And Bestie, what's going on?
Child, I was tired on Sunday. Like I slept all day because I think I was just exhausted from the weekend. So I was again kind of putting a lot of work into some of the goals and things that I'm looking forward to doing. So Saturday took me out, and Sunday I needed rest apparently all day because that is literally what I did. Today is Monday, so I feel like, new week, new goals. Like, let's get it, let's go.
Okay.
And like you said, this whole workout thing. So I got my steps in today. I was
Hey.
squatting for no reason, pushing up. I ain't do no planks. I ain't do none of that. But I did some ab work, just not the planks.
There you go.
Because like you said, we will be in Cancun, serving cakes. So hopefully the cakes look nice. I don't know, because people ain't been serving them.
Hey, they're going to be out there. Cakes, buns, the
All
whole
of
bakery.
It's
We
gonna
out
be
here.
on full display. However it is. Cancun gonna get this body, however it is.
I love it.
So I'm doing my best to do my part, but hey, it is what it is.
I swear.
So here we are.
Here we are.
So now it is time for the tip.
Yes.
So you guys may have noticed, if you're following Brunch with Besties podcast on Instagram, and if you're not, shame on you, you should be following it. It's at Brunch with Besties podcast. We have been posting Sierra Nicole. She is a credit consultant. She is here to get your credit right. So you might want to check her out. Her Instagram is at Consult with T. So that's CONSULTWITHTEE. You can call her at 414-399-5504. So that's Consult with T. Make sure that you check her out so she can help you get your credit right. She's working on things to remove from your credit, like tax liens, late payments, medical bills, evictions, bankruptcy, all those repossessions, charge-offs, student loan. When I saw student loans, I said, look, T.
Listen, T can have all my money.
Look, do you need another bestie? Because I'm here for that. Take these student loans, away. Lord. Take it away.
Take them away, Lord.
I give them to, I surrender my student loans to you. Man, away. I'm telling you.
All that.
So make sure y'all check her out. It's the last quarter. We got to make 2020 count. So we can't, there's a lot of things that we were not able to do, but we can get our credit right if we consult with T. So check her out.
Love
and
it.
For the last time, her number is 414-399-5504. That's Consult with T.
Awesome.
Sierra Nicole.
I love it. Yes. Shout out to her. That's what's up.
So now it's time for tea time.
All right, here we are.
Our favorite part.
I know, right? It's the best part of the show.
And so, Jazz, last time when you were here, after we turned off the mics, then you just start spilling all the tea.
Right. You really, we had a conversation after the conversation.
Like what?
Right. Like, okay.
And so, you shared a couple things with us, and the common theme was around kind of, healing relationships with your mom. And I think as young women, right, we have this relationship with our mom where when we're young, they're like our best friend, like toddler age. When we're 16 or in the teens, we kind of hate them. We think they know nothing. When by the time we turn 20, we realize that they probably knew everything, but we don't really, but we want to be independent. You know what I mean? Right. And then by the time you're 30, you be like, hold on, wait a minute. People are losing their moms. Like, is my mama old? Like, what? Right. How do people go on without their mother? So it's just, the nature of your relationship changes as you grow up, as you have more perspective, as you start to see them less as your mom and more as a woman. Right. So to kind of understand how they did some of the things that they did, and and then you start to look at some of the dumb stuff you did. Then you're like, well, I can see how my mama made a mistake or two.
Right. Yes.
The apple don't fall too far from the tree.
Right. Right.
That's a word.
So maybe you can just give us some background on how your relationship with your mom has progressed. So maybe starting as young as being a child.
Okay. So, my mom had me when she was 21, maybe, but she had got, married to my dad. And, I was the only girl. So I was this, little princess, whatever. And then I had 3 younger brothers. So then they came. But my mother also lost her mother when I was in elementary. So I feel like that's a big piece of why, our relationship wasn't the perfect, relationship, or just what you would think that a mother and daughter relationship would have been. I'm just like her in a sense, I also do have like a lot of my dad in me, so I'm like a good mix of them. But like, I look just like her, I sound like her. We both play basketball like all the way through college. We both speak, so both work with kids. She works with younger kids. I'm like more of the middle school age. So we're very much like alike. So, you know, that was a thing too. And I think we also did like clash. A lot of the clashing kind of started in like middle school, going through college, and I had left around like 18. So I feel like that was like, oh, that's the end all be all. I couldn't take no more. So I essentially left. Now that I look back, I'm like, it was necessary for me to kind of like get out or from up under her, just so that our relationship needed to breathe. My parents are like helicopter parents. My mother, they didn't let me go nowhere. So it was just like a lot of rebellion and stuff. And then, like I had mentioned to you guys, with my parents being ministers, I had experienced or went through a phase of like with homosexuality, and my parents being ministers, my grandparents being pastors and stuff. That was just like a no-go. And they didn't know how to deal with it. Like, they just didn't know how to cope with that. There, you have this little girl that was your princess that's like, she's just doing the ungodliest sin, you know, and not even doing it, but she's experiencing or feeling these feelings that are just so ungodly. So they didn't know how to deal with that. And me as who I am, this strong person, and I feel like I was a strong child too, needed certain things that my parents couldn't give me. That I've even today I've had to get from people that aren't my parents to help me cope with a lot of the things that I've had to like go through. So that was like one of the biggest dividers between me and my mother. I think she just didn't know how to support me in that, or how to like help me, how to bridge or get my relationship with God on a certain track. Like, it was just kind of like, oh, there's a mess in here. We're just gonna like try to, you know, get the mess cleaned up with dirty towels, and we're gonna like, you know, just not clean it and not really like tend to what the real issue was. So that was for me like the biggest thing that created the wedge. Yeah, and then because I knew how they felt, I was always very secretive. So then they felt like, oh, well, you don't share things with us. Like, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you doing this? And it's because like I know how you guys are going to respond to it. So at a very young age, I had to be very in control of my emotions, very like calculated with what I was doing, very calculated with how I said things to my parents about how I was feeling, who I said it to. I wasn't open like at all. It was like, oh, we're here. Like, it's a very closed book. And I think I also like resented my parents for that too, because they didn't allow me to just be my full self. So, I mean, that I don't want to like go on a whole, that wasn't rant, but I don't want to further the rant. And I mean, even more, but in a nutshell, that was a lot of the, just the bumps in the roads. That was the nucleus of the issue with my mother and I think.
So both of your parents are ministers, correct?
Everybody.
Yeah, you a minister, here a minister, there a minister, everywhere a minister.
So my dad's side of the family is the church side. My mom's side is more of the athletic side. My grandparents, so my granddad and my grandmother, my grandmother had 10 siblings. My granddad had 15. So I think there was about four preachers that came from my granddad's. And there was maybe about 4 that came from my grandmother's. And then all the grandkids, all the kids and stuff. And I'm like the third, you know, generation. So, and I'm like the younger bunch of the third. So there's pastors just all throughout. Yeah, my mom, my aunts, my uncles, my dad, my grandparents, their siblings, cousins, like everybody on my dad's side, essentially.
Literally everybody.
Yeah.
Like, so then you were saying that you kind of felt stifled and had to become very calculated about. So even before the whole homosexuality event happened, even before then, you kind of felt like I just have to censor what I say, how I say it, because it's going to be, I'm going to get some feedback and that may not be conducive to my involvement.
Right. And that was the moment that I realized that, because even with my dad, I used to tell my dad everything. And then I realized like, oh, which he probably should have, but he would go back and tell my mother. But I had a really close relationship with my dad. So once I realized he was telling my mom, I stopped telling him stuff. And he knows that. He'll bring it up to this day, but because I was calculating in my head, like, I was telling you, I wasn't telling her, you going back to telling my business. But it's like, that's your mom. Like, he should be able to do that. But I just had a different relationship with my dad. So that was like in elementary when I remember cutting back from telling my dad things. And then I had went through this experience of just mentally feeling a shift. And I knew, oh, I can't tell nobody about this. Like, I think I maybe told like a best friend, but like in terms of people that were like over me or like my family members that were older than me, it was like, no, I can't. And it maybe started around 10. So at 10, I knew like, no, I can't, tell them. And that's a heavy load to carry for, someone that's in elementary, someone that's in middle school. Like that was a really, heavy load.
Yeah. So then did you have anyone that you would consider a mentor? Like you said, you could tell your best friend, but any adult peers?
No. Not until I got into high school. We have a group out here, and the guy's name is Pastor Kevin, and he's like a brother to me now, still today. But we had a group that was the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. So I went to high school, and we would have this group, and I'm like, okay, I grew up in the church, so let me go, and I'm an athlete, so I'm qualified or whatever to be in the club. So I would. And it was just very different. So like, you guys put on the post, I grew up Church of God in Christ, very traditional, very like old fashioned, just all of that, just wrapped up in one. So when I was introduced to like this whole, like, God is not this mean God that's like telling you can't do this, you can't do that. Like, there's freedom in God, essentially. That's what he kind of pushed to me. So I think I told him after I had left the school, because I was only at that school for my freshman year. And I think I told him after that was probably the first time I had ever told an adult anything. And what I told him was like, you were really a light for me. You really helped me in a lot of like dark times, because my freshman year was like crazy. It was just crazy, just the stuff that I was dealing with. And I think I ended up telling him, it may have been years after our encounter of me being there, in that club for that whole year. I think it was years later. But yeah, he was the only one, and I was maybe 16. So that was after 6 years of me not having anybody that was older to talk to, 6 or 7 years, and me finally being like, okay, I think I can tell somebody about it that wasn't like, a friend or like my age.
Did people at your church, did they explicitly say, so some churches will come over the pulpit one time a year and say like, rebuking homosexual, like they'll name a bunch of stuff, and then they'll like really kind of focus on
one thing.
Yeah, they'll like really like drive it home,
Right.
And in some churches they'll like lightly graze over it and not really go too deep, and some churches never mention it at all. So was your church, like, which category would you say that your church was in?
Well, when I was younger, I don't remember my grandfather mentioning it at all. And then I remember I felt like they knew when I started being involved in it, because it was like in prayer, like, I bind homosexuality and the spirit of lesbian. And it's like, yo, like, y'all didn't used
all of a sudden they want to bind it.
Yeah, like all of a sudden. But to me, it made me more upset. And even now it makes me somewhat upset, because it's like, if I'm big on like energy and spirit and stuff. So if God was telling you or putting something on your mind or on your heart that something was going on with someone that's in this group, then go and help. You don't go and call it out in prayer and think like, oh, that's the end all be all. Like, why didn't anybody go and say, well, let's actually do maintenance with this. Let's actually like deal with it. And that's what it was for years. It was just like, all right, they praying for me, and it's like, oh, we bind homosexuality, and it's like, all right, cool, y'all gonna do this every Sunday, and I'm going to church every Sunday, and this is what it's gonna be. But as an adult that is like over kids now, who does believe like, you should move in spirit when it comes to your finances, when it comes to your entrepreneurship or whatever, like, move that way. I hope that I don't ignore like that sign that someone needs help, because that's essentially what it is. Like, whether you are looking at it from a church perspective of, oh, it's wrong, or you're looking at it as you're just a child that is going through something and you need to figure it out. A 10-year-old feeling those emotions needs help, regardless of if you are trying to get them to really feel themselves or really like become stronger in themselves, or if you're trying to get them to be like delivered or whatever. A 10-year-old dealing with that and those different things, they need someone to talk to. They need someone to help work them through their feelings. So for me, now that I'm older, that's something that I look at like, but y'all were being unctioned to say something in prayer, but you weren't following through and having the conversation with either the group or with me as an individual.
Yeah, you weren't making sure I was okay. You were trying to bind out this you're calling a demonic spirit, but you
Right.
don't even know if I'm okay, if I'm good.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then during that time, what did you think about your relationship with God? Like, did you agree with the ideal that, I'm going to hell, this is a sin, or were you like how did you rectify your faith and your feelings?
So I always knew based on what I was taught, and I try to be very careful with my words in this, because I know how it feels to be in something and you feeling like you're bound in this, or you can't get out of it or whatever, or to feel like this is how you're supposed to be, because there are some people who feel like that is what it is. I was just taught a certain way. So I broke it down to somebody the other day and I was like, the same way, you were taught that 1 + 1 = 2. You know that like nobody can come and tell you 1 + 1 = 5. Those principles are those like foundational, if that's the word, I don't know. But that foundation of 1 + 1 = 2 is also equivalent to like my foundation of church and what is sin and what is not sin. So I was taught that that's a sin. So even it was for years that I was dealing with this. Every day, there wasn't a day that went by that I thought, oh, this is not, God is okay with this. Like, God is okay, or I'm not going to hell, or it's not a problem, or it's not a sin. I knew every day, but I think you get so bound up in things, and that's what it was for me. I'm a teenager going through this. I have no willpower. I had no strength to pull myself out of it. So for some people, it's just like, it may not be that, but I was just taught a certain way, and you can blame or take it to the people that raised me, but that's just how I was taught. So the same way I can't go against like 1 + 1 = 2, I can't go against the fact that like the Bible does say that is not a thing, that we're supposed to be doing. So ever since it started, I never felt in my heart like, oh, okay, God is I never thought that my life would end in that. I always thought that there would be me coming out of it, even when it seemed like there wasn't a way out of it. I always was like, no, I'm not. I'm gonna be married to a man with kids and have kids at some point in my life. Maybe not now, but at some point. So if that like answers the question.
Yeah, I guess I was wondering. So at 16, you told the youth camp advisor. How did your parents find out? Like, what was that like? Was it like we kind of know, or did you finally come out and tell them after having that conversation with the camp advisor?
They would always ask, and of course, I'll always say no. They will always just be like, "Oh, who is this person?" or "What is that?"
Rule number 1: deny.
Deny.
So yeah, that was that. I was a freshman in college, and I had broke my foot. Broke my foot on a Friday, and we went to church on Sunday like we normally do. And my granddad during Sunday school, he walked up to me. He was like, "I need to talk to you after church." And I'm like, I've been going to church with this man my whole life. He ain't never hit me with no, "I need to talk to you." So I'm like, all right, whatever. So we're sitting there, and like I said, I'm on crutches. It's me, it's my dad, my mom, an elder, and it's my grandmother and then my grandfather. And we're all sitting like in front of the church. There's nobody in the church, just us 6. And my granddad asked me, he was like, so he had a dream. He was like, "I had a dream that you have been dealing with females." So I'm sitting there with 5,
Oh
preachers.
wow, he just put it on Front Street.
Right.
That was the
Yeah.
intervention. Listen.
Right. So I'm sitting there with 5 preachers, and
Right.
in front of the church, the building. There's nobody in the church, and I'm like, okay, like, yeah, all right. Well, we'll say that. We'll go with that. So big
I would have been like,
commotion.
by deal, do you mean
Right. Be more specific, Pastor
Right.
Grant.
Like, what are you talking
Right.
about? So that
like,
was
I mean,
a big
everyone
thing.
has friends. I
Right.
mean,
You just my friend,
Right.
Granddad. Like, what you talking about?
I'm just trifling though, so hey.
Right. So it really caught me off guard, and I was just like, I'm not gonna sit up here in line for all of y'all. So I was just like, yeah, that's what it is. So my dad had got upset because he felt like I should have told him before or something, which was like never gonna be a thing. So my mother, she was kind of just like quiet. I think my grandmother was quiet too, and my granddad was like asking me like, well, what are you gonna do now? And I'm like, I don't, my foot is broke, one, and I like didn't know that you were gonna ask me this today, like, so I
Yeah,
don't know.
like,
So
Granddad, I don't have an exit strategy. I'm trying to deal with these crutches and learn how to walk.
right,
Okay.
Yes.
right.
It's
So yeah,
definitely put on the spot.
definitely, and this was at 18. So my parents like left me at the church, so I had to go. I went home with my grandfather, and I stayed with him, and I was going to school and stuff, and I stayed with him, and we had Bible study on Tuesday. So everybody, of course, that was, a key part in this story was going to be there. So we had another meeting, and it was like, oh, you can't play basketball anymore. You have to be home by 2, and you can't be on the phone and all of this stuff. And I'm like, yo, I just need a place to stay. And at that point, I didn't even know that my foot was broke because no one had taken me to the doctor. So it had got hurt in a game. The trainer was like, wait for the weekend. Me not thinking that I'm about to have this life-changing weekend, but she's like, wait for the weekend because the swelling might go down. And then Sunday was when everything kind of blew up. So no one had taken me to the doctor, so I'm just on crutches. So I'm also going to practice, and my coach is like, why are you still like not doctored? Like, why haven't you been to the doctor? And I'm like, I'm trying to get my life together. Like, and then I came back the second day, and he's like, what, are you gonna go? And I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna go. Then the third day, I'm like, okay, yeah, let me tell him. Like, I don't even know where I'm about to be staying. So Tuesday, we had Bible study. I was like, you know what, I'll just be the bigger person and agree to whatever the, rules are, whatever they said. I had left the house, and mind you, they were like, be back by 2. I was on crutches, and I was like, I'm not getting back to the house by 2. So I called my mom, and I was like, or my dad, I was like, I'm not coming, back. I'm gonna come back to get my stuff, but I'm not living there anymore. So
This is at 16.
This is 18.
Oh, 18. Okay.
This is 18, yeah. So, and the thing with that was, my parents raised us in a very like peaceful environment. My parents raised us to be, we didn't see turmoil, we didn't see strife. My parents don't drink, they didn't cuss, nothing like that. So for me, that was the most like unpeaceful environment that I had ever been in, at least in the house. And I felt very, very sick. Like, and it wasn't like I ate something or like I had to go to the bathroom. I just felt sick. So I was like, ironically, one of my teammates, her mom came up to me and was like, if you ever need anywhere to stay, like months before, she was like, if you ever need anywhere to stay, let me know. So I'm like, people say that, but I'm like, I'm not going to need anywhere to stay. Like, I have my parents. So I called her and I was like, you know what, I'm going to wait till they take me to the doctor. And then after they take me to the doctor, then I'll come and stay with you. But then that day had happened where I was like, I'm not crutching back home. So that's when I called them. I came to get my stuff. And that Tuesday was the last night that I stayed at that house, and stayed with my parents. And then I left. They tried to talk to me at some point in times, but I had got to a point where I was just like, I can't take the emotional, like, up and down. And I was just like, yo, my mom would call me and she'll be like, how are you doing? And I'm like, yo, why are you calling me? And I called my dad and I told my dad, I was like, yo, tell your wife to stop calling me, basically.
Ooh.
And just like, but and the thing was, because it sounds harsh, but you have to be protective of your peace. My parents weren't in a position of nurturing me at that
Yep.
point.
No,
And
I
I
get
had
it.
to remove away from that, you know,
I get it.
so.
But you literally was like, that's your wife.
Right.
That ain't even
Right.
look.
My
And
mom
I was,
tell
I
your
was
wife.
very hurt. And I was very
Yeah.
hurt going through that. So, you know, that's why that came out the way that that did. But it was, and it also was like, oh, I don't live under your roof anymore. Like,
Yeah.
y'all stop, you know, checking on me. I stopped talking to my parents for maybe about a year to a year and a half. Like I tried to forget their number. They were blocked in my phone, all of that. Like it was
Wow.
like it was I didn't talk to them. Um, my and there was a lot of things that went on because that was another thing where okay, we would start to talk and get back close, and then something went. And I mean, I guess I can be candid on here. I had a hickey on my neck, and I had came to church one Sunday, and one of the church ladies had seen it. So mind you, me and my mother and my father, our relationship is very like on the rocks, like it ain't nothing. So she goes and she tells my mother, and it's right before Thanksgiving. So this was like a Thanksgiving. I had left in February. This was Thanksgiving. So all of that time, we're finally getting to a point where she was like, okay, you should come over for Thanksgiving or whatever. So I'm like, all right, cool. So I'll come over. She says that. So then my mom sees me and she's like, well, I don't think your dad is going to want you to be at the house with that, you know, on your neck or whatever. But mind you, it's Sunday. Thanksgiving is always on Thursday. So it's like that, whatever. So I said, I won't be there. And I didn't even go back into the church. I left, didn't even stay for service. I just left church for the whole day. And after that, he had a conversation with my granddad. And then my granddad had a conversation with me. And I was like, yo, I'm good. Because it was like every time something would come up, I was like taking finals or something. And it was taking away so much from school. And I was like, y'all are not backing me right now. So if I don't focus on school and getting myself out, like getting this degree, then I can't rely on y'all from what it looked like at that moment. Like right now, it doesn't look like we have a good relationship. So it's not like I can come and call on you when I need you. So I'm like, I have to let y'all go because y'all keep messing with mental space and I have to focus on school. After that time, that November, that was when I was like, oh, we're good. Like you guys are blocked. I'm cool. And I kind of just cut that relationship off, unfortunately, but like I had to because it was like y'all gonna keep tugging and pulling me, and I'm gonna keep thinking like, oh, we're back good, and we're not back good, but we are, and it just wasn't gonna work. So my heart got very hard during that time, and after I was upset about it because I wasn't the same person because of that. My heart got so hard. I mean, I was very emotional before. And then like about a year and a half later, I was like, yo, I'm not even like, I don't even cry. Like, I don't even feel like that because I had to really
Protect
just,
yourself.
That's a defense
like put a
mechanism.
guard up
Yeah.
essentially. So that was the whole situation with them finding out. So after November, that was when I was like, oh yeah, y'all, we're good. I don't need to talk to y'all anymore.
Did your parents ever, so, I heard you say a couple things, right? When you said, tell your wife, right? You were literally like putting distance. And then you
Right.
said, I had to protect my mental space. I got other stuff going on in my life. I'm trying to be successful and literally you're pulling me down.
Right.
So it's not good for my mental space. Did your parents ever come to you from a place of love and say, like, hey, I hear this is going on. How can we support you? Do you have any questions? How did this start? When did it start? What do you need from me? Is there somebody else that you can talk to?
Right.
If you can't talk to me, you know what I mean? Just, aside from what you gonna do, you need to stop. We gonna set up all these boundaries to like make you not do this or like inhibit you basically from doing this.
Right.
Did they ever come from that place of like, hey, are you okay? How do you even feel about this?
How are you feeling? Yes.
No, nobody did in terms of my family. No, and my family is church, so which is very ironic. Like, no one came to say like, oh, like you said, are you good? Are you okay? What is it that you need as an 18-year-old? And to me, being 18, you're a baby,
You are a
essentially.
baby
Like,
at
you're
18.
not
Yes.
grown as they make you seem like, oh, you grown now. No, like, you're not that. You're not at all. 18 compared to like 35, 40.
Ooh.
You're a baby. So,
Mm-hmm.
no one did. But I don't even know if, now we all, I'm good with my parents and stuff, like, completely now. But I don't even know if they know how to properly deal with it now. I had to deal with my own healing by myself, and like I said, to create that distance, and then also go through this whole thing of like, just because they're ministers or they're preachers, they're still humans. And I think a lot of times we put these preachers on like pedestals and expect for them to like, oh, be like God, and it's like, you're the same kind of person that I am.
Mm-hmm.
The same way that you have to answer and say yes to God every day is the same way that I do. You may decide to do it a little more than I do, but you also have an option to say no sometimes. And you also have an option to be unruly or to be ungodly. And that's what I had to get with them. And that's what kind of helped me through that. It was just like, and it kept me close to God during that. Ironically, with the life that I was living, it was just like, but God never left me. And that was the thing too. I'm like, y'all tripping, but God is still waking me up every day. Like, he's still doing the smallest thing, but the thing that's keeping me alive, which is the most important thing. But y'all can't get your feelings together when it comes to this.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like, it was very shocking to me. But no, they didn't come to me and ask like for if I needed help or support or like if I was okay. That wasn't a thing.
You know what I think? I don't know. I think when people think that you're not okay, it makes them so uncomfortable that they don't even necessarily tend to what you need. They just want you to stop.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like if you're an addict, they literally just want you to stop. They don't care how it happened, when it happened, what the process is like for you. They just want you to stop. If they feel like you're gay and if they think that's a sin, they don't care how you do it, what you even think about it. They just literally want you to stop.
Right.
If they're not comfortable with you being depressed or whatever, they literally just want you to stop. They don't care if you got to lie and put on a fake smile, because it makes them so uncomfortable.
Right. And that's what it was too. My mom, she speaks about, I think my grandmother or somebody, no, not my grandmother. Somebody had, I guess she was just, she had lost contact with her daughter. And I was now this person that was like, I don't want to talk to y'all. And I remember she would say like this lady at a church, she was sitting there and I guess my mother was like crying and she was just like, what are you crying for? And she told her the story and she was like, it's not about you. Like, you are embarrassed about something that has nothing to do with you, essentially. And she speaks about that being like a turning moment for her and being able to, I don't want to say be more there for me, but to be more present in my life. So maybe not to help me through what I was going through, but to at least be able to exist here and not, like you said, be uncomfortable with it. So I think that was the thing. Like maybe they were, I mean, even my granddad, he was like, what am I supposed to tell my friends and stuff? And I'm like,
right. Like, you worried about your friends?
Sir.
You didn't even ask about your grandchild. Like, it's about
at this point, since we just trying to say, hey, tell them whatever you want, right?
It's about me. And I mean, being gay or lesbian, like, it was very taboo. Now, not so much, but I think years ago, like, it was very much so, and especially in the church. Now, I didn't grow up in the church or anything like that, but, I've seen, like, what happens at church. And sometimes I've been at churches where they were, like, blatantly, like, that's a sin. You're going to hell. You're going to die. And it's just like, what? Like, very extreme.
Yeah.
And I was just looking around like, what? Like, this sounds crazy to me. But, and it's interesting that you said, like, your mom had to get some perspective from another churchgoer, right? She was at church. The lady is talking to her like, but it's not even about you, bro. Like, it's about your daughter. And I'm glad that she had that conversation to give her some perspective to be like, well, let me step back. Let me take myself out of it and let me see how my child is doing. Because at the end of the day, like, above anything, like, you're her child. Like, you were in the womb. She fed you, she clothed you, she bathed you. Like, if anything, there's that ultimate connection that's above anything. So get into the root of, you all's relationship and her being your mom and trying to understand who you are as this growing woman, because at the time you were still pretty young, but you were a young woman and trying to understand who that young woman is.
Right.
And I think Sherry mentioned it earlier that, you know, at one time our parents were young women too. It's hard sometimes for me to believe it with my own mom. I'm like, dang, she was 21 out here doing stuff. And it's just like weird now that I think about it. But now that I'm, you know, 33, it's like, okay, I see it, mama. Like, you just a woman. Like, I used to put you on this pedestal, but you are just a woman and you got some issues. Me and you both have the same issues. And I'm just like, wow, like that's crazy to step back at that. Do you think one parent were at the time, were you more angry at one parent over the other, or were you both equally like, nah, man, forget both of them?
Yeah, I think it was more of like a forget both of them. Yeah, because it, you know, there was no one without the other. So
yeah, they were united front.
Yeah. So they were very, you know, they were one, that whole, you know, biblical term, like you become one, that was who they were. So I don't remember being more upset. I know that like I said, they were blocked. So at some point when I had unblocked them, my dad's messages came through and he was like, you know, be upset with your mom. But this was like months after the messages came through, or after he sent the messages. This was like probably later on that year. He was just like, you know, talk to your mom, like be mad at me, you know, your mom wants to talk to you and stuff like that. And, you know, I didn't even get it because he was blocked. So I didn't get it until later. But yeah, that just went to say, like, I didn't, you know, call one parent and not call the other parent. Like, no, it was just like, I can't deal with either of you guys. Yeah, like y'all both gotta get put to the side for a minute.
And what about your siblings?
Well, they're young. So my brothers are 5, 10, and 12 years younger than me. So for me, it was tough because they're, I mean, my boys, like those are my little brothers. So it was tough to not see them, but they didn't, I don't know if they could really recall like what was happening. Maybe the one that's 5 years under me, he may be able to say something, but I don't know if the younger two really understood the magnitude of like what was happening.
What did you need in that moment? Like what would you have wanted your mom and your dad to do?
I don't want to get emotional. I think that brother question made me emotional, but what did I need? I think it was someone to be open. Like I said, if you were unctioned to like say, oh, we bind this in the name of Jesus or whatever, it was like, well, you also were unctioned to fix it and you didn't want to talk. So literally someone that just had like an ear to hear, and then I don't know if they would come up with like a solution after that, but it was just like literally someone that was just like
willing to work through it with you.
Yeah, just talk to me. Like I was young, so it was just like just have a conversation with me. And I think they're so scared of, you know, this taboo topic that you can't even sit and talk to a 14-year-old who's going through that. And they're only 14. Like that shouldn't be a scary thing. You should be able to discuss those things with our youth, and we don't. And like I said, whether you feel like they need to be delivered, or whether you're going the more like route that the world is going, and or not the world, the secular world is going, and saying like, oh well, just let them be them. But either way, you need to talk to them. You can't just let a kid grow in, like, you know, you talk to kids whether they're straight, gay, whatever. Like you have to talk to kids. You can't just let them skate on through life. And I think that's what it was, where I knew that I had to be very closed in. And at some point I was like, I don't want to be like this anymore. But then I also was like, I can't harp on this because I got stuff to do, like, or, you know, just whatever. So I think that was it. Just somebody to talk to about it that wasn't my friend, like somebody that was older that could help me just work through my feelings. Like I'm not even asking like for you to take me to God in prayer and you know lay my burdens down. Like no, just talk to me. Like I don't know what else, just talk. Like, that's it. So that was probably what I wanted. That's what I've said over the past years. It's just like, y'all could have just opened your mouth, and that would have been it, you know.
Did your parents ever apologize and say, "I'm sorry, I couldn't be what you needed in that moment"? You know, like maybe they didn't know what to do, right? You know, maybe they never dealt with it before.
Yeah.
No, I know they didn't know what to do. I know they probably still don't. And they didn't necessarily say that. There were like some apologies that happened because I think it was them realizing like, okay, we were your parents, and in that situation we may not have acted like your parents. So I think that was like what the apologies, came up as. But yeah, in terms of that, like, there was no really this thing of like, do you need something, or like, I'm sorry that I couldn't be that. Because I don't think anyone really knows that. Even though I've voiced it like this is what it was, I think it's still a taboo topic, even though we went through all of that. Like, it's still a touchy topic.
So then for you, I'm curious as to what you believe. You know, some people believe that they were born bisexual, heterosexual. There's a bunch of new terms now, so I'm gonna stop there before I get some hate mail.
Right. We don't want the community coming after us.
Right.
We don't know. Okay?
we love the community.
We do.
We're not here to disrespect the community.
Right.
And then, some people feel like, something traumatic happened to somebody and they got turned, right? So back when I was younger, it was always like if somebody was gay, they got turned out, quote unquote, right? I'm throwing up my quote fingers. And then some people think like it's literally just the devil. It is Satan himself, and you're going to hell.
You're going to die.
I mean, I'm sure there's other thoughts as well, but I'm just as to what you think. Yeah, I know, right? They are very extreme.
Like, whoa.
And I mean, some people think, well, God made me this way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And hey, how can you, everything that you made was good and you made me. And here I am.
Right. And it's, for me, that's why I'm very careful, because I know how it feels to be that younger person now, not necessarily as an adult, but to be that younger person and to have very, very, very strong feelings, and to also be like, if this is not what you want, then why am I feeling this? Like, why would you allow this to be a thing? This is not what it is that you want, for my life. And I know what that feels like, to be like stuck in something, because like I said, it was from like 10 to about 20, 21. So there were a lot of moments in that where, and not 21, probably 20. There were a lot of moments in that where it was just like, I'm stuck. Like, I don't know how. It's not something that you just pull yourself out of. You don't just like wake up and you're like, oh, I'm just gonna walk down this yellow brick road today. Like, I'm not gonna go down, that one. So I understand why people say they feel like they were born that way. I understand why people feel like they don't have a choice in it. Like, I get it. I don't necessarily agree with the fact that we were born that way, and I know someone might come for me for that, but I'm coming from experience. I don't think that was me, and maybe there's a stronger feeling, but yeah, I just know what it feels to be. The hope was strong, very, very strong, and I'll say that I do understand why people would feel that way, because as much as I knew that it was wrong, there was a lot of times where I tried. I mean, it would pop up in my dreams, and I was just like, what in the world? Like, I'm trying to, go down this path, and I'm, not doing anything but dreaming about stuff. So that, to me, is where I feel like people can feel like, yeah, I don't have a choice in this, because it's popping up everywhere, and I'm not even actively like involved in it. So yeah, the whole like going to hell thing, I try to stay away from that too. Like, I know what I was taught and what I believe, but I don't push that on anyone else. And I feel like, that's a conversation that you got to have with God. And I can't tell you anything about that. Because like I said, I'm very careful. I would have hated for someone, and I hated when it was said to me, like, oh, you want to help for this. And it's like, well, I can't get myself out of this. Like, I'm stuck right now. Or this is where I want to be. So yeah, I'm very careful. I'm not one to go and say, like, you going to know, but you go talk to God. Whatever God lets you know is what it is. But I'm not, I can't, because I know what that feels like to be in that and to really, be living that, or to be in love with somebody and someone tell you like, well, that thing that you think is so like beautiful is not of God. It's like you don't want to hear those things. So yeah, I try to stay away from the
So a lot of times people think that, PKs or preachers' kids, that they be the wildest kids, right? Like the ones that drink, they whatever. And
Yes.
so do you think, so I have to ask because that's like the myth, do you think that contributed, because before you talked about feeling stifled and like, oh, I gotta almost be perfect. Do you think that contributed to be feeling like you're bound in something and feeling like you can't get out? Was it more so pressure of perfection? Or do you think this is, no, I was just attracted to girls and that's just what it is?
Well, so I'll go two ways. I'll go the spiritual route first, and say that I think because of the lineage that I come from, because of even just the calling that's on my life, and even what I do that's not even attached to the church, I think in terms of this like spiritual warfare or whatever, that there are people that the devil will try to take out, and that might go over people's heads. But there are people that will go through a lot of like trying things, whose mind will be like messed with and stuff, because there's like a greater, calling on their life and stuff. And I think even about like the story that you tell about, well, not the story, but your experience with your father and stuff, and hearing like the things that he went through, and then knowing that he also has like been a pastor or is a pastor and is, at moments trying to like walk with God, but then also like sometimes people slip back into those vices that we have. So I think like the devil does try to grab a hold of people. And I think because of who I am and the calling that is on my life, that I was just a target in that. Because I was the innocent girl growing up. I, went to Christian school in elementary, know the Bible, would win awards at Bible things and stuff. So I was like, oh, she's going to be the next preacher in the family. And then it was like, oh, maybe not, because she's dating female. So I think that was a thing. Now, in terms of like naturally, I think because I was so sheltered, that my imagination grew like crazy. And when you're not able to do anything and you're imagining things or you're thinking about things, and you're curious, that was the furthest that I can go in my curiosity. That was like against what I was taught. And maybe it wasn't intentionally or it was like subconsciously, but that's what I feel like happened, where I was so just sheltered. And it was like, well, let me think about, or not even think about something, but what can I, like, I was just curious about things. So I feel like that's kind of where that where that came from, with me being so sheltered. And that's why it's like sheltering your children a lot is not always like the best thing to do. Like sometimes you have to let them ask those questions that seem like crazy, or find out what they're talking about at school, find out, what's really going on, but trying to keep them away from everything, they're gonna find out the same way my sheltered behind did. Like the way my sheltered behind went and did the exact opposite of what my parents wanted me to do. So that whole shelter that they had over me, it didn't mean a thing. So yeah, that would be like my answer to that.
So where are you now, like living in your truth? So how old are you, Jazz?
25.
You're 25. So now 25-year-old Jazz, like you're very comfortable talking to us right now about it, but have you spoken about this before?
Yeah.
And okay.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yes. So I've even spoken at churches and stuff. Because I think there's a lot of preachers now who are getting to be more not lenient, but they're like, this is a problem for us, or we have a lot of kids who are trying to, or our musicians are doing this, and we need to learn how to deal with it instead of sweeping it under the rug. So I would start getting calls starting in like 2018, the end, and then 2019, where pastors or like youth leaders would be like, oh, can you come and not only talk to the kids, but mainly talk to the parents and tell them about like my experience. And it was, you live your life and you feel like life is just normal for you. And I was like, yeah, this is something that I went through or whatever. But then when I tell people, they're like, yo, that's a whole thing. Like, what do you, like, you went through that and you cool with your parents now? Like, you talk to them, and it's like, yeah. So a lot of people, I would just say it casually because I am comfortable with it. It's not something that I don't, I'm not tripping off of, but they will be like, oh, I need you to come do this. So I've spoken to candidly to people in the church and let them know, like, y'all, gotta stop being timid and scared to talk to people. Like, or you have to get close to God to figure out what is it you're supposed to say. Like, God is not going to have you fearful in having this conversation, and he doesn't want you to not talk to your child. So it's like, if you aren't tapped in with him, you are going to end up in a situation that my parents and I were in, where we just fell off, and that's not the will of God for parents and children, like, at all. So that for me, like, now I do openly speak about it, whether it's church or not, more so in the church than outside of the church. And then, like, just now, like I said, just me, I've always been somewhat close to God, or kept God like near, but just trying to like really, really tap into like God and like my spirit man and all of that. So I don't, date females now. That kind of stopped. And like when I was 20, like I said, not kind of stopped, it did. So that, part, and I can't even really tell anybody how to get out of that. Like, I don't even know. I look back and I'm like, oh wow, that's something that I was worried about for so long. It's no longer a part of my life. So yeah, that's kind of like where I'm at now.
So then how did you start healing the relationship with your parents?
I was staying with my grandparents, and my granddad told me if I wanted to stay there, I had to talk to my parents once a month. And I hadn't been talking to them at all. So he was like, if you want, that's what he said to me. So I called them, called my mom. She didn't answer. Maybe she called me back like 3 days later or something. It was a very weird conversation. But then slowly but surely it got to like where it is now. And this is about 2 to 3 years, 3 to 4 years later.
Wow.
Yeah, almost 4
Wait, so
years.
how long were you not talking to them?
Like a
We're
year.
about a year and a half.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like 2013 and 14, around that time.
Wow. That
Yeah.
is so interesting. You mentioned something earlier as well about your mom's mom passing away. So do you think that played a part in the relationship that you and her had? She passed away when you were in elementary school? Okay.
So yeah, my uncles would always tell me, because me and my mom got into it a lot when I was younger. So my uncles would tell me like, this is how mom was with her. So, this is her. And it was like more as if it was like you telling me, the 12-year-old, to like really comprehend that this is how her mother was, and I need to be okay with us getting into it, So they would tell me that, like, this is how mom was with like her. So this is how, like, just I don't know what they wanted me to do, but
It
that's
is
what they
what it
told
is.
me.
Yeah.
Right. So now, you get older and you realize, like, even me just thinking the fact that, seeing other people that are my mother's age or even older than my mother, or seeing my dad's parents still be here, and then having to realize like, wow, my mom lost her mother at a very early age, and that wasn't supposed to be a thing, because like my dad has his parents still and they're like alive and well. So that was a thing for me where I realized like, um, you know, more so recently, like that probably was a big reason as to why we had the relationship that we did, because she wasn't able to talk to her mom about like, how do you raise a daughter, or like, what did you do wrong, or what did you feel like you could have fixed with us. And she didn't have that in very like necessary years. And I'm pretty sure that wasn't a conversation she thought she should have had before, because you just don't accept for your mother to pass away.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that was like a big part of it. And then she was the only girl, so it wasn't like she had sisters or anything, you know, to really talk to. Yeah, so I think that played like a huge part.
Right. You and your mom are like, every
And
time
y'all
you
look
post her, y'all are
identical.
twins, like copy paste, like
Yeah,
literally copy paste.
let me have my own face, so I just
You stole
took
hers. You
hers.
do look like
Yeah.
your dad too, so it's so funny that when you post pictures of him, it's like, okay, she looks just like her daddy. But then when you
Yeah.
post pictures of your mom, I'm like, oh my god, that's the same
Yeah.
person.
Yeah, we are very much alike.
Identical. Like, it's kind of scary how much y'all look alike. I think you
Right.
posted like a picture of a side by side, and you and her were like standing
Same thing,
alike.
the same. Yeah,
Like,
and
I
we
was
were
just
like not even near each other, like just whatever. But yeah, we're like, my mother is more like bougie than I am. I'm a little more edgy than her, but like, yeah, we're very similar. We sound, like I said, we sound the same. We look the same. The only thing with me is, you know, I'm, like I said, I'm more edgier. She's not walking around with hair this color and stuff. She don't wear her hair natural and stuff. So those are like the telling things. And then also like what I wear, you know, and that's another thing with my family. Like my grandmother, my aunts, they don't wear pants. And I think I mentioned that to y'all at the after hours.
the after.
They don't wear pants or anything. Like they dress cute, but they just don't wear pants and stuff. So that's another like identifying factor with how you can tell us apart.
So once a month, Granddaddy said you will be talking to your parents. So
Yes.
that's the start. And like you said, it was uncomfortable. But what was the like pivotal moment where you were like, okay, we can do this. Like, I want to repair this relationship.
I don't know if I ever was like, I wanted to repair the relationship. I mean, I kind of was like, if it wasn't for my granddad, I don't know if I would have ever reached back out. I had like, I was going to, once I finished school, just move to another
In
state.
California?
Oh yeah, I was ready to get up out of here. Yeah, so I was ready to just like, I will have peace somewhere else. You know, people won't know me. I'll be able to start new, but of course I was in school, so I couldn't just like up and leave. So I was ready to do that, and it was like, I don't know, but I remember we would talk, and me and my mom maybe were the ones to get closer first. Me and my father are a lot alike too, so we're like bulls, like just stubborn to like the bone. So I think that relationship took, and even after like our relationship and we started opening up and just being fine with each other, when we would have discussions about it, it was like, oh my God, like I'm not gonna talk to you for another like 5 years because I'm
Adding more time to it.
right. I'm
Hey.
like, right. So, you know, and we would get through that and then get through those things and it would be fine. But I think it was, I know I want to say it was like church kind of. It was a lot of, my mother was a part of this group with Lydia's daughters. And I know y'all don't know anything about that, but in Church of God of Christ, they have a 49 and under like prayer line. And a lot of those women like really talk to my mom about like just being more open with me and being more like receptive. And I think they were also telling her like that piece that she didn't get from my mom of that experience. They were giving her like their experiences with their children. And I think she was starting to see like, oh, I'm not the only one going through stuff with my child. So that Lydia's daughter group, like I was just with some of the women last night, like without my mom. And I'm like so grateful to them because they advocated on my behalf for me, you know, like to my mother in times where she wasn't even seeing me. So I think that was like a piece. And then yeah, it just I don't really remember a lot of like the building moments. I don't remember it. I just remember that awkward conversation, and then like I don't even remember like calling the next few months. I just remember it, you know, eventually being like okay, we're cool. But then also I was like walking on eggshells. Now I'm cool. Like I don't really walk on eggshells with them. But yeah, I can't even
Did you have to
pinpoint.
set like new
I was
boundaries
just
with
gonna
them?
ask that. That's good. That's a good question.
Like, hey, just so we're all clear, I'm an adult, so I'm gonna wear my pants, and I don't want to hear nothing about it.
Exactly.
I'm gonna comb my hair.
The me wearing pants was never an issue for them. Well, for my dad, I think my mom, she tried to push for it when I was younger, and my dad was like, nah. And it's ironic because my dad grew up in the church, my mother didn't. So my mother married my dad and kind of just like followed in line, and she kind of like
went
a
full
little
gung ho.
yeah. So
Super GOGIC.
yeah, so that wasn't a thing, but it was I the not living here. That was the boundary, so that I could leave whenever I wanted to. I can come when I want to, or if I don't want to come, I don't have to. I mean, there was a time, like, they don't know this, but I had drove almost all the way here, and my mental space was just not where it needed to be. But I don't know why I was driving here, but I just felt like, oh, I'm gonna go to my mom's house. I think I was like in the area. I drove all the way here, got to the corner, and made a U-turn and went back home. And I was just like, I'm not in the mental space to be dealing with them. And not that they were gonna be like too much, but it was just like, I just don't need that right now. So that, being able to not have to come home here, like to just do what I want. And I don't disrespect them at all, but they've realized that even with my traveling and stuff, and me just being grown, the stuff that I've been doing, and them seeing like, okay, she's not out here wilding. Most of her time is spent in the community, or it is spent doing like, positive things. So yeah, they had to see that, because initially it was this whole thing of like, she dates females, she must be out here like on drugs and all this. And it was like, no, I was still, the only thing that was wrong, like that I would get in trouble for, was that I wasn't a bad kid. I got good grades. I, couldn't go nowhere. I wasn't messing around with people. I wasn't even really messing around with females until I got into college. But it was just those conversations and me really feeling stuff, or not college, when I was in high school. But yeah, I wasn't a bad kid. So I think they started to realize that as I got older, like it was just that was the thing that really like drove the wedge in between us. And it had nothing to do with like social norms of how a child is supposed to be. It had everything to do with their perception of God and them trying to like uphold God, but then also did it in probably one of the most wrong ways. Because most people, when I tell the stories and stuff, they're like, I would have never sat back in that church, or been back cool with these people that introduced me to God. But that was that piece about me saying like, God really showed me like, they're human, I'm not them. They may try to say that they're like representing me, but that's not me. And I'm still waking you up every morning because I still regard you in a certain way, like you're still my daughter. And that's what really kept me when I wasn't talking to my parents. It was like, y'all tripping, but like, who y'all saying y'all representing and being rude to me and being mean to me, he ain't even wilding like that. Like, I could have been strong. The stuff I was, and I didn't even get into that piece, but I saw so much. Me being sheltered, I saw so much when I was out there, not with my parents. Just crazy stuff. And I just could have been doing who knows what. But I know like God definitely kept me. And that was another thing where it was like, you may think that somebody is doing wrong, but it's not your job to chastise them out of it. Like, that's not it. So
And you don't get to, and everybody gets to do their process.
Yeah.
And they get to do it in their own time.
Yep.
Right.
So just because you're not comfortable with it, you don't get to hit the speed
bully
up,
me.
the fast forward and all that.
Yeah. Because it makes you uncomfortable.
Because it makes you uncomfortable.
Right. And you have to deal with yourself. And I think that was the piece with everybody in my family. Everybody kind of was like, oh, well, she's not even here and we're still bothered. And it was like, I was living my life. I had got on the dean's list. I had got my scholarship to go play and stuff. And it's like, y'all still like, oh, y'all still tripping? But I'm like, and that's what I think, where they realize, like, if we don't try to get into her life, she's not going to try to get back into our lives. And I like I said, y'all was messing up times where I was studying, I couldn't focus. I was working. My schedule was like waking up at 7 to go to school. I was in school till 1. I had practice from like 3 to 6, and then I was on the bus going to go work a 6:45 shift to midnight. And I was doing that almost for 2 semesters, and I was taking 21 units.
Ooh.
So I didn't have time to cry about y'all, and did all of that. And I think when they started seeing like, oh, she's about her business, she's gonna get what she needs to get done, and we're not even supporting her, I think that was like awakening moment. Like, okay, I think we need to get back cool, or like make sure she knows that we're here for her.
Did they realize that they were, what's the word I want to use? Did they realize that they were negatively impacting your growth and your development?
I don't think they thought that far. I don't know if anyone ever thought about me and what I was going through, what I went through during that. I can't say that we've had conversations that have let me know that they were like, how is Jazz doing? It was like, no, the sin. I see the sin. I see the sin. So
and how it impacts me.
Right.
And that was crazy to me, because when they all kind of like spazzed and we were sitting in front of the church or whatever, I had been fighting it since I was 18. I had been dealing with this since I was 10, and like I said, it was a heavy burden for me to deal with, because you know that the people that raised you, that you love, are very anti this. And then you love God too, and they've taught you that God is this kind of spiteful God in a way. Like he doesn't allow you to go through your process. It's, you are sinning, stop sinning, and that's it. Like, he doesn't have grace. And I remember when they got upset, and and I think that's what made my heart hard initially. That's what started that process. Was I was like, I've been dealing with this and trying to fight this off secretly for y'all, and when you find out, you don't even ask me what happened in those 8 years or what happened before then. And that's when I was like, I'm gonna go. I went full-fledged. I was in a relationship with a female for about 3.5 years, and just was like, I mean, just out with it. Just like, this is my life. I'm just doing what I want to do. But that hurt me to know. I mean, I was in class. I remember I was a senior in high school, and I had my favorite teacher, and I didn't get kicked out of class because I wasn't a bad kid. I was in such a daze because the night before I had a dream, but this was a period where I was really trying to just get out of it. I was like, I don't want to mess with anybody. I don't want to do anything. I want to just get out of it. And I had a dream, and I was just so stressed out about it. And I remember sitting in class, and he was like, do you need to leave? Like, are you okay? And I'm like, what are you talking about? He was like, just go stand outside or something. And I was just sitting on the floor outside, like, just stuck. And I've had moments like that because I'm fighting as this young person, fighting against something for them, and not allowing myself to kind of like live in my truth through that. And when they got upset with me, I was like, you don't even know the moments that I fought so hard. I could have just been like, F y'all, basically. I'm going to live my life. But I fought so hard, being 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, like all the way to 18, essentially. And then y'all got upset with me and didn't even ask me about that. Like, that could have sent me into depression. And it probably did. And maybe I should go see a therapist, but they just didn't ask about that. And that made me upset, and that made me push further and further away from them. That made me really get serious in that relationship that I was in, because it was just starting when they had found out, and it went for another 2 years after that. So
Wow.
So you said that, you guys have made amends now, so that's good to know. Have your parents acknowledged the great work that you've done?
now, yes, and it's recent. So maybe at the end of last year, they started to see like, okay, this is something. And then also people mentioning like me to them. I think there was like a season where a lot of people were like, I saw Jazz doing this, or Jazz has a podcast, Jazz is doing this. And I think they kind of tried to keep themselves out of my personal business because they didn't want to know what I was doing, or if I was doing the same thing. So yeah, I mean, it hasn't even been a year, but I'll say towards the end of last year is when, and they'll come to stuff now when initially they didn't. They'll come to stuff, they'll listen, they'll share stuff or whatever. But at first, I think, that was a piece where they were just trying to like stay as far away from like my personal things. Yeah.
That's good. I got a question. So do you think like through this experience with you and you being the oldest child, like, do you think they're more like open to communicate with your brothers than they were with you?
Maybe. I know, excuse me, my brothers didn't grow up as like churchy as I did. They, have a different upbringing a little bit than I did. But yeah, I don't, because I'm also a female, so I feel like they have to. My brother is more open with them. My brother that's 20, he is more open with them. I will say that, and I don't know if he's more open with them because he is or because they talk to him. Yeah, I don't know that my parents really talk to them about stuff like that. So yeah, and then it's just different because I'm the girl and they're boys. So it's, the conversations and the talks are a little different than how they would have talked to me.
Yeah. And then too, like you said, they're 12, 5, and 8 years of a gap.
So yeah, so they're 20, 14, and 12.
Okay, now.
Yeah.
So then they got a whole different version of your parents.
Sure did.
Yes, they do.
Yeah,
I mean, different. And then also I was, the sibling that was by myself. My brothers can go and hang out with me, or not, hang out like that, but like I can pick them up and take them wherever. They also have not my older brother, but the brother that's right under me. So he, will take them over to his like girlfriend's house and stuff. That wasn't a thing for me. I was up under my parents 24/7. So, that's a different dynamic too, where there's a little more room and leeway to do things or to just see different things. So yeah, it's a different, I had to go through the new parents and for them to get who they have now.
Exactly. So, yeah.
You had to break them in, child. You broke them in.
Listen.
That's right. But you understand those things.
Being the youngest.
So then how do you think this experience is going to shape how you parent?
Oh gosh, how I parent. I mean, I've been like careful I'm not careful like I have kids, but just in thinking like I don't.
Do you want children?
No. Yes, I do. I do. But just in my thoughts, I'll say, like I want to be extremely open, but then I also don't want to like make them feel like, oh wow, she's just doing the most with like this open relationship or whatever. But like I don't want my kids to ever go to have the feelings that I did of going through things alone. I want to always be a resource for them. I want to be open with them. I want them to know about like what mommy did, what has been going on. I want to raise them in the church too, but then also allow them like to understand for themselves. Like go ahead and ask why, go ahead and ask questions and stuff. But it would break my heart to know that my child is, like suffering in silence. And I'm here every day, like supporting you, but not supporting your emotional needs. So yeah, I just want to be keen to that. And if it is something that drops to my spirit, like, oh, pray for this, it's like, no, okay, even before we pray, let's talk. Like, what is it that you want to pray for? What is it that you want? So yeah, that would be like where I would think I would want to like move with my children. Whenever I do have them.
That sounds good. Yes. Yeah. As the mama, it sounds awesome. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. I think it's time for our hour to go by.
Yeah, that was good.
That was really good.
Enlightening.
I have a lot to think about.
I know, right? But I do want to say I'm glad that you are empowering the next generation who have questions and who might not have that relationship, or they have a similar relationship to the relationship that you had with your parents. But somebody to allow them to be them, live in their truth, and to vocalize that. I think that's very powerful amongst all of the other amazing things that you do. But I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And not only that, but just to whatever people are in, you know what I mean? To just accept them for who they are in the moment. You know what I mean? And just foster an environment that's conducive to their healing.
Right.
You know,
That's good.
regardless of how they're going to turn out, right? So if they stay gay or not, right? Just whatever. But I just want to do something that's going to contribute to your healing.
Yes.
Whatever that looks like.
And that's a good piece, just the environment, and that environment has to start before you even know that someone is going through something. You know, that environment that's conducive to healing, I think, is so necessary. And even with me, like I'm such a, you know, like I don't know what word to use because I was going to be ignorant, but I'm just very like,
right. You know, we're ratchet too. Don't get it twisted. We're Oprah's.
But things just roll off, you know, like it's just like whatever. I was talking to somebody the other day, and there were some other kind of traumatic things that I had went through with church. And I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot about that. And I'm like, a therapist would probably be like, girl, you need to like get help. But I've literally just like relied on God, and that through that, and I went through some dark, very dark moments when I was not around my family, and not because I wasn't around my family, just because like that's what life is. I was sheltered, like I had a good life, but life will throw you through some turns and some loops and stuff. So I saw a lot, and there were times where I was just like in spaces, and I'm like, I know when they thought about me and they raised me, this was never in the thought. This was never a thing, me being here in this environment. But like I said, you know, God kept me, and the fact that he did, and different things that have come out from different places that I was in and stuff, that has been the one thing. And I think we have to be careful, especially as church people, to make sure that you don't turn people away from God, even if you're upset with them. And that was a thing where I'm grateful to God that I was so strong and essentially they had built the foundation for me to be so strong in my faith that even they couldn't get me off track. And that was like the piece for me where it was just like, that's a dangerous thing, for you to be acting so crazy that you make someone want to turn away from God. Like, how dare you? And sometimes, you know, people are just acting out of self and not really thinking, but it's like you don't, I don't ever want anyone to ever say, because of Jazz, I stopped going to church, or I stopped praying, or the God that she believes in is just, you know, what she does just doesn't make me feel like I want that kind of God. So I think church people have to be very careful. Like, if you are turning people away from God, you need to go check yourself, because that's a very dangerous thing to do. So
yeah,
I think that's like a big thing.
It is, right? Because I'm gonna leave that there. It is.
Period.
I mean, what else can I add to that? Right?
Period.
That's a dangerous place to find yourself if you're contributing to someone's downfall.
Yeah.
Because I mean, life without God, right? What is that?
Right. It's a ship without a sail.
Right.
Yes, just lost. Jesus.
This was good though. I'm glad that we were able to come back.
Yes. Listen, you're welcome anytime here.
I know, right? We're gonna have to just pencil you in.
You know,
once a month.
Anytime.
So look, and what are we gonna take home with us? So I'll start with you, Chanel. We'll do a round robin. What goes in the to-go box?
For me, I'm definitely I guess I see this both ways, as a daughter and as a parent to somebody. To definitely just be open in communication, because I feel like it was a little reverse for me. Like, as I got older, like my mom went through some things, and I me and her just couldn't get it together and see eye to eye. But then, you know, just thinking back to, you know, letting her do her healing, I need to do my healing, but then having a common, you know, understanding for each other and what that looks like. So just building on that mother-daughter relationship in that way, but also as a parent, like allowing my son to, you know, openly communicate and feel how he feels and not kind of berate him or degrade him or dismiss how he feels, but empowering him to use his voice and find his voice, even if it's with me. Just because I'm his mom, like I'm not this authoritarian type of person where you don't have a voice and you can't say anything to me. So that's what I'm taking away.
And Jazz?
I mean, this was therapeutic, and saying everything that I've said in totality is always like therapeutic for me. So thanking you guys for like providing that space and or even asking me to come and talk about this. But I think just the thing that you said, Sherry, about like creating that environment that's conducive to like healing. I just try to, even with community, like that's a big thing for us in the Black community. Like there's no activism work without healing, and I try to like move that way, especially with the riots and stuff that have been happening. All of the events that I've thrown after George Floyd have been like healing events. So I think like that was very, you know, telling, and that's something that I can apply to like very different spaces in my life. It's just like make sure whatever environment you're in or whatever you're creating, make sure that it is conducive to like healing, even if that's not what the intention of the event is for or the, you know, environment, but like allow it to be a resource for someone if they need it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That's good.
And I think for me, you said a ton of stuff, but a couple things that stood out is when you said that my parents were not providing the right mental space for me, right? And just realizing that you can control that. You know what I mean? So you made a conscious decision to take a step back and say, hey, you can't give me what I need right now, so that's cool, but I have to be able to recognize I can't keep going back to it, right?
Yeah.
Because who's, you know, how's that going to leave me? Like you said, they probably sent you into a depression, and your girl has been there, so what a rough place to be. I think for me, I've been through a lot, so I think that I try so hard to provide a space like that, to not be judgmental, to just kind of be with the person wherever they are. And that is the mission of our podcast, right? Heal and help others as we heal and help ourselves through purpose-driven conversation. So that's what we're looking to do. I think a lot of times just through conversation, there's healing in that. Even if I don't give you an answer, right? Even if we don't solve the problem, there's just more awareness because you were able to articulate your feelings and you felt heard. Right. So I agree. I never want to stifle somebody from sharing their emotions or make them feel like they're not valid or like it's not a thing. If it's a thing for you, then it's a thing.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, so I think self-preservation, you know, making sure that you get what you need in the moment, and not being afraid of what that could look like.
That's good, because and I think that's what I was doing, like, and not consciously, but that's essentially what I was doing, was just trying to preserve myself. And I think, you know, self-preservation sounds like, oh, it's a beautiful thing, but I'm like my heart got hard, you know, for real, like I was saying, and I'm like, that was to preserve my heart, so that even now, when that hardness removed, I still had like my emotions, and I couldn't let them take that part of me. So like sometimes that self-preservation doesn't look like this beautiful like spa thing. Like sometimes it's hard. It's like through the mud, like you going through the valleys and stuff, but
You're
you
trying
come
to drag
out.
yourself out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because what I heard you say is you felt bound. You know what I mean? And I think that a lot of times, like you said, some people may not even realize where you are. But if you do realize where I am and you see me trying to scrape my way out, I'm already bound. Don't push me, right? I'm already close to the edge.
Don't
push me, because
I'm literally at the
close
edge. Like I'm jumping any second here, you know?
yeah,
So speak life or don't speak, right?
Yeah.
that's it.
That is good. That's it.
That's it.
All righty.
Okay.
Well, thanks for tuning in to Brunch with Besties podcast. Until next time. Peace.